Welcome, everyone. This is the very first Unstoppable Rollups community call number one. Unstoppable Rollups, of course, is an initiative that the Facet team is spearheading, the Facet team being myself and Michael Hirsch. And Unstoppable Rollups is basically this idea that it is important that rollups cannot be shut down by anyone. Pretty simple idea. This is a great feature of Ethereum, but we think that this message is something that needs to be heard, and so we are working with the great support of an Ethereum Foundation grant to do it. And the first community call is not really about Unstoppable Rollups exactly, but about something else, about exit windows. We're going to talk about what exit windows are and why they exist and whether they work or not. And as you can see, I'm going to be taking a very strong view here in the initial presentation, after which I hope people pick me apart, because how on earth could this such a strong view be right? Okay, but it's right. So the view is basically this: exit windows absolutely do not work, and it's not even close. So it's not close. You're going to come away from this presentation thinking, what? Who thought this was a good idea? Vitalik endorsed this? What? It makes no sense. That's the level, the burden I'm giving myself to prove that to you all. So if I fall short of that, you should tell me that. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I want to point out, this is not really about exit windows specifically. Exit windows are the core feature of what is called stage 2, which is a stage of evolution for rollups. If you're in this chat, you probably know what the stages framework is, what stage 2 is. And so this goes deeper than exit windows. I'm going to be attacking the idea of stage 2 because stage 2 depends on exit windows. And so if the exit windows don't make any sense, then stage 2 makes no sense. And so I'm going to be making the claim that basically stage 2 is a religion. It's a nice thing to believe. And I have nothing against religion. I love religion. But when it comes to other people's money, when it comes to users' money, they better be in on the religion too. And I don't think users are. So we're going to be taking down this idea of stage 2 and exposing it for, really what it is, which is basically wishful thinking. So how do we do this? The most basic first step is, what is the point of any of this rollup stuff? And it's actually pretty simple, and it makes a lot of sense. L1 equivalent security, right? We want rollups to inherit the security of the L1. This is the core idea. Right? This isn't just some random blockchain. This is a blockchain that connected to Ethereum. And because of this connection to Ethereum, it's going to enjoy the security properties of Ethereum. And so Vitalik says it very nicely here, the tweet is below. If the L1 is secure, your assets are safe and can be withdrawn. So if the L1 blows up, you're host. But if the L1 is secure, you don't have to worry. You're secure. Your rollup is secure. Your assets are secure. So there is a logical implication of this. This has nothing to do with my opinion. This is just logic, which is that if a rollup intends to inherit L1 security, it cannot halt, cannot stop unless the L1 also stops, right? And the reason, of course, is very simple. If the L1 is up and the rollup is stopped, well, the L1 is secure and you can't withdraw, right? So the definition of inheriting security is if the L1 is secure, you can withdraw. L1's up, it's secure, you can't withdraw. Therefore, you are not inheriting security if you have halted, right? So this is this should not be controversial. This is logic. So let's think a little bit about halting that. Okay, so imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and you pick up your newspaper, and I love this illustration because it's a POV shot, right? You're holding the newspaper and it says this: SEC obtains court order to shut down Base. I'm going to pick on Base here because Base is number one, and when you're the number one dog, this is something you got to deal with, but it could be any roll-up, as you'll soon see. And so, one question you might ask yourself is, of course, what happens now, right, if this actually happened? Another thought you might have is, isn't it weird that it would be pretty unlikely to see a headline that says SEC shuts down Ethereum, right? I think we all feel pretty good about that, but this doesn't seem as weird, or maybe it is weird, but like, what's the deal here? If SEC tries to shut down Base, what happens? What happens to users' money? Okay, so this is like the beginning. And so what we see here is it's actually pretty easy, right, for the SEC to shut down Base and every other live rollup today, except for Facet and a few other rollups that are not EVM equivalent. So if the SEC wants to shut down Base, they get 15 signatures. They find 15 people or whoever these private keys belong to, and they say, hey, sign this L1 transaction. And in a future conversation, we can get into the exact details of how that would go. But sign this transaction, or sign 2 transactions, and now Base is over, right? It's done. And, this is a scary idea because the SEC is pretty powerful. The U.S. government's pretty powerful. None of these 15 people are going to defy the U.S. government, right? Period. End of sentence. I don't know who they are. I don't care who they are. No individual person out there is going to defy the U.S. government. They have the nuclear weapons. So you can't rely on 15 signatures, okay? Now, this is on its face insane, right? Like, you know how much money is in these rollups? Billions, tens of billions of dollars. And it's recently achieved stage 1, which is very good. They should be praised for that. And stage 1 increased the number of signatures for shutdown from 8 to 15, right? It's almost doubled it. So now we're at 15. So, 8's way lower than 15, but at the same time, billions and billions of dollars, you should not be celebrating any outcome that is 15 signatures. And so, the way this happens basically is what's called on-chain governance, which is the ability to change the rules of a rollup by interacting with a smart contract on the L1. And this is something these rollups have, and the L1, for example, does not have. So now we have to ask this question, right? Because I don't want to be too hard on these guys, right? They admit they are not at the finish line. So you don't want to criticize someone and then they're admitting the criticism is basically valid. Like, we want to criticize where they're going, right? We want to criticize stage 2. Okay, and so now we ask this question: will stage 2 improve the situation, right? Bad situation, 15 signatures, shut down the top rollup. Will stage 2 improve it? And curiously, stage 2 actually does not change the fundamentals of the situation, right? It doesn't change what the admins have the power to do. It adds what's called an exit window. Okay, and so the idea of an exit window is if the rollup's on fire, you can climb down the exit window and go to the tropical paradise over here. And L2B, who, shout out to L2B. Like, if we're not for L2B, we would be, banging sticks together here with this stuff. So shout out. And L2B describes it this way. They say you need at least 30 days to exit the system in the case of an upgrade. Right, so if the upgrade is killing the rollup, then you have 30 days to leave. And it says this ample time frame allows users to react and withdraw if they want to. So you can leave. You can't stop bad things from happening, but you can leave before they take effect. This is the idea of the exit window. And so this is the subject of this talk. So let's get into it. This is a summary of where we are, right? We have today 15 signatures can shut down Base. We all think that is bad, right? Base itself. Once we reach stage 2, well, 15 signatures can shut down Base in 30 days, right? They can initiate a shutdown that will happen 30 days from now. And the Ethereum L1, of course, cannot be halted by a small group at any notice period. So clearly, stage 2 does not get you L1 security. It does not allow you to inherit L1 security. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. And the fact, of course, is on day 31, the rollup is down, the L1 is up, and you can't withdraw. Right. So remember, the definition of inheriting the security of the L1 was if the L1 is up, you can withdraw from the rollup. And obviously, the exit window puts a time limit on that. So this is not inheriting the security, period, end of sentence. However, I don't want to be too uncharitable here because, I'm not trying to say, hey, here's the definition. You have to fit the definition. What matters is results for users. And so I'm not going to hold it against stage 2 that they'll inherit L1 security. I'm going to ask the question, is stage 2 good enough? Are exit windows good enough? Do they do a good enough job, right? I'm going to be kind, right, to the exit window position. And so the question is it good enough? And the answer is no, it's not good enough. It is not even close, not on this planet, not on the moon, none. And so why? Well, there are 3 fatal flaws with exit windows, and any individual of these fatal flaws would be enough. There are 3, so it's a lot, right? And the fatal flaws correspond to the way exit windows interact with different types of assets that users might want to withdraw or otherwise be safe. So if you think about a rollup, there are 3 types of assets. Okay, the simplest one is bridged assets held by EOA. So you bridge in $100 of some L1 token. You hold it in your EOA wallet on the rollup. Simple. That's easy. A little more complicated is bridged assets held by L2 smart contracts. So you bridge an asset from the L1 and then you deposit into a lending protocol, a Uniswap, a vesting protocol. You deposit your asset into a smart contract. And then finally, we have native assets. That's assets that are minted on the rollup. Assets that have no, assets the L1 doesn't know about at all. And so each of these assets are poorly served by the exit window approach. And let's see why, going one by one. So our first flaw touches on bridged assets held by EOAs, the simplest possible case. And this is just an argument about exit costs. So Vitalik, in a blog post from earlier this year, did a back of the envelope computation at today's L1 capacity. And he said, well, in an exit scenario, it's a mass exit, you're going to see really high gas, call it 100 Gwei. And given, you can read the blog post that's some premises about like the amount of gas required to exit and this kind of stuff, like nothing controversial. You get to $30 per asset per user, right? So if you have $10,000, it costs $30 to exit that. But if you have 10 different assets, it'll cost you $300 to exit under these assumptions. So here's one way to look at it. You have 3 million users, 10 assets each. This is the math, $900 million in total user exit cost. And of course, the attacker makes a single L1 transaction, right? So even on the most basic level, ignoring any subtlety, right? It's like, how does this make sense, right? Your defense mechanism, the thing that's supposed to stop the bad guys, costs users $900 million and the attacker $5, right? Now, one argument you can make here is, well, the whole point of Italic's post is to say the L1 has to get cheaper to make this better. Okay, make it 10 times cheaper. Now it's 90 million to $5. Okay, make it 100 times cheaper. Now it's 9 million to $5. The numbers here, it's the magnitude of the difference, right? That is the really relevant thing here. It's 9 million to $5. That is still nuts, in my opinion, for a defense system. So why don't we let's put this in context by looking at comparing it to fault proofs. Okay, so fault proofs are a different mechanism for making rollups. They pertain to validating state roots that are meant to inform L1 smart contracts what the state is on the L2, and they are interactive. So basically the way fault proofs work is that, this is a high-level view, is that anyone can observe what state roots are being posted. And if a bad one is posted, anyone can challenge, right? This is called the one of n security assumption. So this is like considered to be like pretty darn good. Obviously it'd be great if we could just prove everything and there's no people involved. But if you have a game where people are playing the game and keeping themselves safe, it's nice to say only one person has to be honest out of every single person. That's a really nice property, right? Now, when you play the fault-proof game, you're going back and forth, right? And you're trying to nail down the exact point of disagreement about the computation that led to the state root. And then once you find that, you can determine who wins. So everyone at every stage of the game has to put up money as a bond to say, I'm betting this on myself being right. And the beauty of it is that the loser loses everything and the winner wins everything. So the defense of this is free because you're guaranteed to win if you're right, and you don't have to pay anything. You get the money from the attacker. Now, I put free in quotes here. It's not actually free because you need the liquidity, and there are all kinds of problems with fault proofs. So I'm not trying to say fault proofs are perfect, but as a setup, it kind of makes sense, right? You have one honest user defend everything, and the defense is free, at least modulo like liquidity stuff and this kind of stuff. And so you can see the argument that this actually generates a pretty nice equilibrium. Because you can't win as an attacker, because you lose everything if you try, then you won't attack. And here we are. Everything's safe. Everything's all good, assuming it works. So this is a nice, okay. Now let's look at the exit window story. First of all, every user must defend their assets, right? There's no one of n single honest user stuff. Every single user, millions of users, each one of them has to do something active to defend their assets, okay? Defending the assets in aggregate is super expensive, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And the attacker loses almost nothing. And then finally, depending on the attacker's goal, because of this, it is economically feasible. Right. And so what could the attacker's goal be? I don't know. Maybe the attacker wants to hold the rollup ransom and says, hey, you can pay me $20 and then I won't make you withdraw your asset for $30. I'll charge you less than the exit. Another thing the attacker could say is, hey, I've made a very significant bet on a market bet that will go up if there's total chaos in this rollup and everyone loses money. So I want there to be chaos. It could be a competing rollup. It could be a competing government. It could be anyone who finds value in costing users $1 billion and that doesn't defend against it. They will attack. And of course, what we know about game theory, right, is it is not just that we have to look at one game, right? This is a part of a broader strategic landscape because all rollups have exit windows, at least according to this stage 2 thing. And so what are you going to do? User takes money out of one rollup, puts it in another. That rollup has an exit window. That rollup gets attacked. And so my claim here is basically there is no equilibrium, right? Because of the economics here, attacks will continue until everyone is out of money, right? Like any rollup that has this target on their back, it's only a matter of time because the attacker does not have to do very much. So, it's a very strong claim here, which is that you think exit windows are protecting you, but actually they're just slowly making you go broke, and it's happening slow enough that you can't feel it. So And then the last thing I would just say here is that fault proofs have received a tremendous amount of research. L2V done a great job. Many people have done a great job on fault proofs. You can read a lot about their flaws and how to do them better, a ton. I have not seen any research paper or any formal analysis conducted on exit windows. Zero. So if anyone wants to dispute that claim, then or say they've seen it, I would love that, because I've been trying to like do a good argument here. I don't want to ignore the claim, but no one defends this stuff because it's a religion. Okay, so now let's look at this. Here we have the humorous conversions here, which is that fault proofs and exit windows are protecting the same house, right? It doesn't matter the economics of fault proofs that I showed in the previous slide, because an exit window can be used to get around it, just get control of the keys, right? And here we have the stray cats going in through the open screen door of an exit window, while the secure door of the fault proof is. Okay, so that is not all. So now we have another problem that pertains to the interplay between two systems. One is the protocol level exit window setup, and the other is the application level smart contract setup. These two things don't know about each other, and yet they interact. And that lack of knowledge plus interaction causes a problem. So basically the problem is user assets aren't just owned by EOA wallets. Assets that you own, you deposit sometimes in smart contracts in the protocols. Here's some examples, right? You got vesting is an obvious one, perps, lending, staking, any number of things that it's a protocol that exists that has rules. Any protocol that has rules might have rules that don't align up with the exit window. So in the picture here, you can see a very simple example, which is a smart contract depicted as a treasure chest with the rule that it unlocks in 31 days. You get the treasure, the assets inside. On the top here, we can see the condition of the protocol, which is you have to exit in 30 days. So obviously, if you have to exit in 30 days, you can't get what's in the smart contract. And so that asset is lost, even if it's $1 billion, right? Even if you could pay a ton of money for it, you can't get it because the smart contract has its own rules. So here's a simple example, vesting contract. You can see there is 3 sections at the top. We have the green when the rollup is live. We have the exit window, which is orange, and we have the red when the rollup's dead. And so now here you can see the vesting contract with weekly token release, right? Everything's fine. Assets getting emitted, vesting. Okay, boom, all the vesting is dead now, right? You can't vest after the rollup dies. Here's a vesting contract with quarterly token release, okay? Oops, none of the vesting happened during the exit window. All of it happened when the rollup's dead. All of the money is lost. This is a simple example, but the purpose of smart contracts is to place assets under the control of rules that are outside what a user can do, because you have to pre-commit. So vesting is a pre-commitment. All smart contracts have the ability to let users pre-commit. So, this is the absurd thing with exit windows is that, when the first rollup achieves stage 2, the first general purpose rollup that achieves stage 2, people are going to celebrate a lot. And yet, if you've watched this presentation, you can think, wow, that is some celebration for a rollup that cannot implement token vesting. That is a lot of fanfare for such a rollup. Okay, fatal flaw 3, the way native assets are handled. So in this diagram, you can see the comparison of L1 native assets with L2 native assets. Those are assets issued or minted on the L2. L2 and rollup are used interchangeably here. So L1 assets, here's how you withdraw them. Well, you have this asset contract on the L1. This is asset contract on the L2, which represents the asset on the L2. The L2 communicates the state of ownership to the L1 using, proofs, fault proofs, is one mechanism for this, but that's important. And then the bridge contract can know, based on that L2 ownership state, for example, that I have just initiated withdrawal by burning my L2 asset, and so it can transfer me the escrowed asset that is escrowed on the L1, right? You deposit something into contract on the L1, you get a thing on the L2, you burn that on the L2, you get the thing out on the L1. That is called a deposit and withdrawal. Makes sense. But now, suppose you mint the asset on the L2, okay? You can still communicate to the L1 in a trust minimized manner who owns it, but what does the L1 do? What does the L1 bridge contract do? There is no escrowed asset. There is no correct thing to do, right? There could be many bridge contracts that receive a message, and all of them could decide to mint some L1 asset that they think is going to represent the L2 asset, but there's no canonical answer. So if you don't have an L1 asset that is escrowed, an L2 asset cannot be withdrawn. And by withdrawn, I mean in the common sense of the word withdrawn. You can communicate state to the L1, but there is no there's no canonical asset. And so this is actually like a brutal problem because, there is no way to, it's not just that there's no canonical asset, there is actually no way to have a canonical asset. Okay, so consider this. One thing you might say is, well, suppose you have a community around an asset, like an NFT community, and the rollup blows up, and now users turn to the artist, the creator of the NFT asset, and the NFT asset issues a new NFT on the L1 corresponding to that L2 asset that's dead. Everyone gets their airdrop and everything's all good, right? You have a social consensus form around this new token, okay? But that's not really possible. Like, obviously you can't count on the creator to be there, but that's not really possible because of composability, right? Like, this NFT might have existed in isolation, or it could be composed with other assets in protocols. Like, for example, if someone was taking out a loan using this NFT as collateral on the L2, okay? That person is now depending on the security of that NFT, and so that person is now a stakeholder in what the L1 asset is. So it's not just the community of the NFT, it's the community of every single asset the NFT touches across every protocol everywhere in the L2. Good luck finding who those people are. Good luck taking a poll. It's literally not possible, okay? But it gets worse. It's not literally possible times 10 because you cannot copy behavior from an L2 environment to an L1 environment, okay? What you want to say is this L1 asset is equivalent to the L2 asset, but it's not possible because the L2 is a different execution environment. For example, the L1 has 12-second block times. L2s have 2-second or other smaller block times. Suppose the contract depends on block time. Suppose the contract depends on a certain block number. Suppose the contract depends on a given contract address, which is a pre-deploy on the L2. It doesn't exist on the L1. A million things are possible here. It is not possible to recreate. L2 asset behavior on the L1. And then, this is something that, fortunately, we've seen some acknowledgement from leadership on this fact. Vitalik, in his post, Reasons to Have Higher L1 Gas Limits, basically acknowledged this and said, in not so many words, issuing assets in the L1 on the L2 is not secure. We got to get them to do it on the L1. Tomasz didn't say the first part of that about how L2 assets are not secure, but did say always issue assets on the L1 in this tweet. And these to me both were absolutely stunning things for the top people to say, basically, for a number of reasons. One reason is, hey, everyone, do we believe in this rollup thing? Because if we believe in rollups, if we believe they're secure, and we know they're cheaper and more convenient, why are you telling people not to mint on them, right? You should be saying mint everything on the rollup because it's just as secure and cheaper. And so the question is why? And if the answer is these things aren't secure, then it seems like the natural thing to do would be A, tell people, and B, fix them, right? Make it safe to issue the asset on the L2. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that is stunning is what do you say to someone who already owns L2 minted assets? Like, what do you literally say? You can't go to the person and say, hey, listen, go back in time and mint this on the L1. Let me give you that advice. So they can't go back in time. So my question would be, any advice for that person? And then finally, the most stunning part about all is just, what planet can you think this is going to work, right? You think it's reasonable to go tell people who have become addicted in a good way to convenience and lower fees on a roll-up to say, no, you got to do the more inconvenient thing. You go back to the L1, you got to issue it, then you got to bridge it to the L2, then you got to manipulate it and trade it. Like, no one is going to do this. So if the strategy of creating a secure ecosystem depends on changing this user behavior, then I can just say it's guaranteed not going to work. And so we have to come up with something that is aligned with user behavior, like, for example, making it secure to do it on the L2. Okay, so what are the consequences for users here? So one is every user must defend their own assets, right? So that means you've got to know when your assets are at risk. So don't go on a vacation that's more than 30 days, right? You lose all your money, right? So you have to monitor it. Again, compared to default proofs, we don't expect every user to monitor state roots, but we do expect every user to monitor governance. Okay, now you have to pay money to keep your asset. You have to pay money to keep what's already yours, maybe hundreds of dollars, maybe not. We don't know exactly. The defense does not scale. It scales with the value of assets, which is good. Pay $10 to save $10,000. That's a good deal, relatively speaking. But it does not scale with the number of assets or number of users. Every increase there costs more gas. You're going to lose your time-locked assets and native assets, most likely. And overall, if this happens to you, you're going to say this is not L1's equivalent security. This sucks, right? You're going to say this is not good. Why did the people in charge set this up? Now, the worst part is, of course, it's going to happen again because you're going to pay gas to escape. You're going to deposit into another L2 that has an exit window, and that's going to get attacked again. And so that's the other meta consequence here is there is no guarantee at all. In fact, the guarantee, in my view, of the opposite, that this is a just once scenario. So, okay, this is not the subject of this talk, and I don't want to give it too short of a shrift here, but just to give you a preview, like obviously I'm not here just to point out faults in other people's stuff, although in this case I think it's worthwhile just because of how big this religion has gotten, basically. But I'm also here, Michael and I are also here, and the community, you all listening to this, are also here to try to improve the situation, or at least present an alternative, okay? And so our claim is basically, we're not going to defend it exactly here, we're going to do this at a future call, but unstoppable rollups solve all these fatal flaws. Get rid of the exit windows, you solve a lot of problems. But there are also flaws in unstoppable rollups, and maybe they are bad too, we're going to see. The point is there is no easy answer, no one size fits all, but doing only one strategy, when that strategy has fatal flaws, i.e. the stage 2 exit window strategy, that is not good. There should be other strategies. So real quick, just for food for thought here, this is kind of like a dense table, so like I don't want to get too deep in this right now, but where are we going? Well, the big picture here is you can't have on-chain governance. You can't enable a small group of people with any exit window to be able to change the roll-up rules by signing a transaction. Okay, this is it, basically. That's the deal. And there are a couple different ways to do that. So one way, the immutable contract roll-up way, is to say, hey, everything's the same as it is today, but none of the contracts can be upgraded. Okay, and that solves the problem. Now, one issue there is if there's a bug, you lose all the money, so that's a problem. Bugs are bad. But even if you could solve all the bugs, an issue is that if you want to upgrade the rollup, then you can't upgrade the contracts, and so you have to switch contracts, meaning everyone has to withdraw from the bridge of the old rollup and deposit it in the new bridge. But they don't have an exit window to do that. They can stay on the old one as long as they want. So this solves the problem, has the problem. Sovereign rollups, which is what Facet is a rollup that doesn't use any L1 contracts at all and has no canonical bridge that either needs to be upgraded or abandoned when there is an upgrade. So in the normal rollup case, you have to upgrade it. In the immutable case, as I mentioned above, you withdraw and redeposit. In the sovereign case, you don't have to do those things, but here's the trade-off. You don't use an ETH gas token. You get to use Ether for gas. That's bad. How bad is that relative to other things? That's the question. And then finally, we have this native rollup concept, which is extremely promising. The idea that we can use the L1 logic instead of application level smart contracts to validate rollup state. And we're going to use pre-deploys for this or something like that. And this is really interesting because, if you want to get L1 level security, then why not just use the L1 to validate the rollup in some way? That's really interesting, but it runs into this problem of rollups are really complicated and customized, and can the L1, operate can the L1 develop the complicated rules for all rollups to do this, or how else do you handle that? So these are three approaches. We're going to talk more about this. They all have big trade-offs. Are these trade-offs fatal flaws? Maybe. There's no perfect answer, but there's definitely got to be different options, and that is what we are about at Unstoppable Rollups. So that's it. Thank you. That's the presentation. I purposely tried to make this as extreme as possible, not because I believe everything I said. Everything I said is true, but ordinarily maybe I would be a little more lighter hand on it. But the reason for that is I was trying to generate any conversation that can come from this, and so I would love it for someone to jump in and tell me how big of a moron I am, and that I'm the religion one. So let's get to it. Any questions? Any comments? I think you can raise your hand. Or, okay, how do I actually do this? Okay, I'm just going to enable microphones. Don't turn on your microphone unless you are doing something important. Okay, let's go. I think Julie, maybe your hand was up first. Let's go to you.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for the talk. I think you highlighted the limitations of the approach very well, and you also gave some nuance. My question is, would you apply a similar reasoning to something like an L1 contract, which could be a DeFi pool or protocol that has some governance that has a smaller, or that has an exit window at all? Because we know that there's a lot of TVL also in protocols that have this approach.
Yes. So that's a really good point, and kind of gets to this question of like, I said in the talk, like, I don't care about the terminology, I care about users. And so this is a good criticism of my approach when it comes to users. And the criticism is basically, look, you could have the best protocol in the world, the most unstoppable protocol in the world, but if all the apps on your protocol are centrally controlled and have exit windows, then users are not going to be that comforted to learn, oh, your protocol is good, I still lost all my money. And an app level, protocols and governance is always going to have this, needs to have this on-chain, component, I believe. So, you're going to end up with protocols that are unstoppable that end up with these stoppable apps. And I think how that actually goes kind of depends on, the situation. So on Ethereum, right, on the L1, we have famously like USDC, right, which is the number one stoppable and important thing. And I think there's a strong argument to say, hey, Ethereum censorship, liveness, all that stuff makes no difference, because if USDC goes down, there'll be a contagion effect across every single asset, and Ethereum will be dead or something like that, basically. So I think that's a strong argument there. I think my view on this, the premise of this, is that it is good to have a protocol that is more secure and more unstoppable than the most secure and unstoppable app on that protocol. But I admit, with respect to my views and also with respect to the L1 situation, it depends on the facts. So yeah, I think that's a very reasonable and good point. I think people should, pay attention to that, lest you think that I'm coming with some, there are caveats to everything. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Does that help?
I mean, can I chime in on that? So I mean, you do have unstoppable apps, famously Uniswap. If your rollup is not unstoppable, then it's not possible to have unstoppable apps too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, and another way I'd put that, because even Uniswap, right, the argument would be, if we were taking the negative view of us, this is Michael, by the way, co-founder of Facet and co-grant awardee of this. Taking the negative view of us, you would say, well, I don't know why I'm being so negative about it myself, but you would say, well, is Uniswap unstoppable? USDC goes down, what's going to happen to Uniswap? I think the stronger or as strong a thing might be just to say, like, well, there's native assets, and native assets, as long as they don't pair with bridged assets that can be, native assets can be, can really approach that, ideal. So, to the extent people love native assets in native state, CryptoPunks are native assets and the ETH used to trade them are native. And so people have a closed thing there. That's good. But yes, I agree that, someone coming an app, let me take a bigger step back here, actually just frame it like this. Like, there is a virtual machine thing, the EVM, which has all these rules, right? And then there's a protocol level thing going on. And if you want the EVM to work with exit windows, then that has to be programmed into the virtual machine, right? So if you think about the way like an operating system works, when an operating system says, I'm shutting down, it lets all the programs know, hey, you're shutting down and do something graceful with this, it doesn't just pull the plug. And so there should be an affordance in the EVM that basically says, hey, when there's a governance upgrade or something like this, I'm going to somehow let every contract know or, do something, or let contracts rely on it going on forever, because even stoppable apps, want to be able to rely on some aspects of the system. Ilya.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, thanks for the talk. It was great. The question is, overall, I agree with you. The exit process overall is an issue in the modern rollups, but there is an obvious issue for that. With that, you're right. Any unstoppable rollups has their own inconveniences for users, and today for any typical user, I don't know, my grandma, whatever, it's so much easier to take, the top rollup, I don't know, Arbitrum, Optimism, anything, and just use them. So I'm quite believe that for sure there are some technical issues, but even bigger issue here is, well, representation of this, and let's say the fighting against this idea that actually today rollups are already as secure as L1. Do you have any kind of suggestions how next steps in this direction could look like in this, let's say, popularization of the idea of unstoppable rollups?
I think it's a good question. I think, inevitably, it's like you're trying to, you inevitably run into the question, who cares about any of this, right? Like, oh, it's unstoppable. Okay, well, I'm more concerned about like the next month of my life and whether I can do some fun thing on this roll up or whatever. Like, do people actually care? And can you convince them to care. And I think that if the values of money are lower, then maybe it doesn't matter at all. But I think it is, I think people doing things with real value can be educated on this. Basically, like people buy insurance for their house, right? For flood insurance, for whatever it is. They don't wait until the house is flooding. People, 10 years ago, no one had two-factor authentication. Now, a lot of people do. Why? Because everyone said, you got to do this, trust us, do it before you get hacked. I think what we have seen is the creation of a religion that is basically, designed, but has the effect of convincing people that they should not buy flood insurance and they should not, get 2FA. So I think we should change that religion, and we've seen some inconsistent attempts to do so with the urging to not mint assets on the roll-up. And then we can see what happens. I also think a lot of the energy here can come from institutions. Like Base was smart, right? They said, it would be really convenient for us to use Arbitrum. Should we, right? Can you imagine? No, we don't trust these guys. We want to trust ourselves. Base was smart. They're smart. That's why they're number one, right? Like, no question about it. They're not just like luck. But not everyone can build their own roll-up. Not everyone can be Base. And so I think institutions, people who want security, don't want to have to trust someone or build it themselves. So that's a fact. And then I think there is also just improvements in technology, like, for example, like count abstraction, gas stuff, sponsoring everything. Like when it comes to like sovereign rollups, which we're deeply interested in, like the weirdo gas token setup then over time can just be less weird. And then in the future, no one's even paying gas or cares about gas because it's all going on behind the scenes. So I think all these things can happen. But make no mistake, it's like not easy. Like going up against the orthodoxy here, it's like we're probably idiots for doing this or whatever. Why are we trying to? But yeah, I think those are some factors. But I agree, it's a big challenge.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think I agree. That's institutionals and maybe some similar players with big money totally make sense as first target answers to convince them. Yeah, thank you.
Hell yeah, appreciate that, Ilya. Boris, you're next.
Great presentation, Tom. I caught most of it. I had to come in a little late, but I read the white paper and the facts that you have for Facet, which are really well written. Just trying to wrap my head around the idea of sovereign rollups. Super cool stuff. Really nicely presented. I'm still trying to figure some things out, and I'm kind of curious to ask you about. So it's like upgrades to this L2 would be based on social consensus, and I guess in that case that would be the node operators for Facet. Okay, cool. So then that makes sense to me. It's like you're sort of shifting that social consensus from the L1 to the L2. Like say if you had a native rollup where the protocol changes that happen on the L1, which would be slow. I'm wondering then, like, about two things. One is performance, like, gas per block or TPS or whatever metrics you want to use.
Yeah.
Does that become a factor of like the Facet nodes? And then the second thing is like incentives for those node operators beyond just helping provide important infrastructure that enables high value applications to exist.
Right. Yes. Okay. Those are good questions. So just sort of give some people some background. So this is a question about sovereign rollups and Facet setup in particular. Just setting context here, sovereign rollups are one thing we're going to explore. I believe very strongly that they are good, but it's not the only thing. This grant is not about Facet specifically or sovereign rollups. It's the big idea. So this is one aspect that's very important. So sovereign rollups. The idea behind a sovereign rollup is the nodes of the rollup, just like the L1, decide what the rules of the rollup are because they use the software they want. So on the L1, you can use the old version of Geth and run proof of work if you want, but good luck getting anyone to use that with you. And a sovereign rollup is the same way. Compared to a normal rollup, which part of the rules are embodied in smart contracts, which a small number of people control. And so instead of it being this decentralized thing, it's more centralized. Now, with a normal rollup, you can also fork away. You can also run whatever node software you want, but you have to be ready to forfeit billions of dollars in the bridge so no one would ever do that. So that's kind of the setup. So in terms of speed, for Facet and really any sovereign rollup, it's pretty much the same. You have the notion of running a full node or building blocks or doing the heavy lifting. That's going to be get a heavy duty machine, and you can go as fast as you want. And then, like all rollups, the idea is that normal people can look at proofs, can run a node themselves, or can look at proofs if they don't want to do any work, and that can be faster. Facet itself today, we're working with Succinct on this, but this is an annoying negative part of Facet we're going to fix. It does not have a proof system involved. So if you want to know the state of Facet, you have to run a node, which is not that bad. And And then the incentives, what are the incentives to participate? In Base's case, Base will run a big fat node that you could probably just connect to and go nuts on. And the reason is they get fees off of every single transaction. They get the gas. In the Sovereign case, that is also possible. But in Facet's case, we don't do that. The gas token is burned, so it's decentralized in that way. And so it's much like the L1, which is burned. So if you want to run an L1 node, you can ask yourself, why would I ever do this? And the answer might be you run an app. You want to double check an app. But for most people, you find someone you trust in Furrow, Alchemy, and you say, show me the state of the chain. And that's not ideal, but it's fine because there's competition and so forth. So it works in that way.
Cool. Yeah. Again, super interesting stuff. I really enjoying this kind of novel exploration of better, roll-up and blockchain designs. Very important work. So thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Goo God.
Great presentation. I was just gonna say, I came across the inscriptions and what you guys were doing, around almost 2 years ago now. And when I saw it and what I had, what struck me the most, and I think what you're going into right now, what you said before, why I raised my hand, is how can you relay this information? Why would people particularly care? What the difference is and about the censorship end of it. I think people, if they dug down, they would realize that it does matter a lot now with data being able to just be basically wiped or changed or whatever, and there's no real provenance to that source. I think what I've been working on, honestly, is trying to come up with a platform that uses inscriptions to do that in sort of a WikiLeaks type of way, where the data is valued, tokenized value. It could be artwork also that might be offensive or saying a message, whatever. I'm just saying something like that. And basically, yeah. And this way it's very, it's by the people still, it's cheap enough to do, and yet it's there forever. It could be your vital information. It could be the next, whatever. It could be some important thing to humanity that we don't want to go away. These things, they are gotten away from in the conversation, I think, in public. I mean, people just don't really know how to even attack that. And I think this is something that I'm working on, in other words. I just want to hear what your ideas are, or if you think that's a good idea or whatever. I haven't really gotten a chance to talk to you about it, but I think that is kind of bridging the gap between maybe midwits who don't really understand, but they like it. And they get this, though, the culture end of it they get. And I think the inscriptions can do that. It's the only one that can do, out of all the things out, this is the only thing that can do that. And it can be so expandable with mainnet that it's just, it's beautiful. So I think that's something that I just wanted to say, what you thought of, if that's actually on the right track with that, because I think that would work. But
sure. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. I think, as I sort of mentioned a little bit ago, with these protocols, the unstoppable protocols, some of the most powerful stuff you can do is with native assets, because those cannot be touched by anyone, as opposed to bridged assets or USDC type stuff. So I think what you're saying aligns with that. Michael and I actually came up and, with an interesting app. We're not here to promote this app, but since you mentioned it, you could check it out. But it is an app based on very similar lines. It's called Beamer, Beamr. Look for Beamer bot or Beamer.xyz. And it's basically this idea of enabling anyone to create an NFT with a tweet and save that tweet, forever in a way that can't be tampered with on Facet and can't be shut down and preserves the message, even if the Twitter thing gets shut down. So that's something you can check out. But yeah, I think it's very cool and very appropriate for the Facet or inscriptions setup. So thank you for raising it. Cool. Drew.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say you guys are doing an amazing job. Really appreciate it. Been following you forever. And I looked at all the info you put out. Congratulations on working with EF. And you have my full support. And my question today is, do you foresee any Farcaster integration? That you can do things with frames and makes it kind of easier to mint things on social? Or, do you see yourselves integrating into any of these smaller social apps that are popping up? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's if we care about decentralization so much, then why are we on Twitter so much and almost exclusively? And no one's perfect. I have a Farcaster account. I'd like to use it more. I'm just a very scatterbrained type of, it's a lot to handle. But I think anyone who wanted to, again, this talk's not about promoting any of our apps or promoting Facet, but anything unstoppable. If anyone is interested in doing some type of development there, we would want to be very supportive of that because again, anything with native assets really aligns with what we're going for. But yeah, we're just we're two people. It's hard to keep track of everything. But I like Farcaster, and I think people should try to support things that are more decentralized than things that aren't, basically. So I should give it more attention.
I mean, the reason I ask is like the dev community is pretty big on there, and I think it just might be a way to cross pollinate, and people will see what's possible on mainnet. And I think now that it's like every other day someone's coming out with the L2. So to kind of preserve the mainnet and still have cheap transactions is like the holy grail. So I'll talk to you. I'd be willing to try to help and get it going. I mean, you can start small. You even just have mints that go to your back end or whatever. So I was trying to figure out how to just like show ETH-scriptions on there. And I kind of got stuck with the AI I was using. So I'm going to try again. But my goal is just to be able to show an ETH-scription to start, and then just start with the basics and from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. Sorry, I dropped my pen somewhere. Just if anyone's listening to this is like, what is ETH-scriptions? ETH-scriptions is a protocol that Michael and I launched in 2023 that was basically like a proto unstoppable rollup, in the sense that it was an unstoppable L2 of a kind that had these properties but was not general purpose, was more for the NFT use case specifically, and that led us to develop Facet. But it's been our great interest for a long time is developing protocols that have this quality. So always appreciate everyone who liked it and still uses it and everything. We love it. Okay, well, we are about to hit the hour. This was amazing. A lot of great content and insights from y'all. Have a last comment? Otherwise, we can end it. But basically, this call happened very close to the launch. We wanted to get the party started. We're gonna have another call soon. It might take a little longer, and then the future calls, the focus is really going to be, getting into the weeds. And by the weeds, I mean, how exactly can a roll-up be stopped? How do you actually stop base? I'll give you a hint. You can learn all about it on L2Beat. Again, I'm not worthy, right, of L2Beat. Like, you can learn all about it there. And that could be some homework if you want to use, you can use an AI system, right? You don't actually have to do anything anymore. But that would be the homework is, if you were the SEC and you wanted to stop base with as few signatures as possible, what would you do? And that's what we're going to look at next week, or maybe not next week, but the next session. And watch for this talk on YouTube or whatever. Like, I'm putting it out there. So please smash that like button. Any button related to our account, I invite you to smash. And with that, I tell you good night and thank you all.